It is time to check in with State Representative Tacky Chan of Quincy for another Tacky Talk. How are you, Tacky?
Doing good, Joe. Glad to see you on a brighter, sunnier day.
I know we're recording this the day before St. Patrick's Day, which is going to rain.
And it could be almost late summer by Friday, Saturday.
Seems like we've been doing this we have been for 2 years now.
Yeah, the continue roller coaster up and down. Obviously, the numbers have looked much better than it has been since Delta showed up last fall. It's like this roller coaster ride up and down infection numbers. But obviously, we're in a downtrend at this stage. And if you're fully vaccinated and boosted, or is it now fully vaccinated because you are boosted? I have no idea what to call it anymore. Your odds, of course, are reduced in severe illness. Again, I tell people that the vaccines do not provide 100% immunity, just reduce the chance of very severe illness. And we're still continuing monitoring the wastewater. That is now a regular thing for us to monitor wastewater to see whether or not there's been a spike in COVID, because not everything is shown on COVID testing. And people who've taken your rapid test at home and tested positive, there's no guarantee you reported that to DPH.
Right. Yeah, the wastewater testing is kind of like the canary in the coal mine, gives you an early warning.
Exactly. And the Denver service area is well into 1 million people. And given the fact the state's about 7 million, that's a pretty good sample size, especially since it represents a lot of dense urban areas, including Boston and Quincy.
Right, exactly. How's the state house is open now and there's no mask, no vaccine mandate requirement? How's it going?
Pretty much, honestly, this is how I expected. It's very low traffic still.
Okay.
A lot of folks that want meetings with me as the chair, or on a constituent matter, or just people just want to advocate for any issue, has still preferred this format. And it's quite frankly a degree of efficiency. You can meet more legislators faster per 15 or 30 minutes in this format and just keep banging it through the day, so to speak, as opposed to getting into town, driving, parking, getting lost in the building, getting held up, and you got to walk from one end of the building to the other. This type of format is a permanent way of life, as I can tell. And again, all my friends who work in the lobbying government affairs field, there is no business travel still. Their clients out of state are still staying in the office, and more times than not, when I watch them in this format, they're actually home, not in the office when I talk to them. So I do believe this here to stay. I do believe that there'll be still continued low traffic for business, and there is almost no general visitors, so to speak. The days of tourism, where more than half the building is guests from around the world to visit the buildings, a tourist site, or just hang out for a while with students, using the library. I mean, that hasn't occurred yet. It may pick up once we get to the warm months of May, when we get to graduation season. Families come in, they do the full Freedom Trail tour when they do come in. I mean, particularly if you travel from far away, State House is a very popular destination. But the question remains whether or not schools are going to allow school tours of the State House. That's when we have another big pickup in the months of June, basically in the month of June at this point. I mean, it's generally late May, but most of June is school kids. And given the very high infection rate of COVID through the school systems, you got ghosts knocking at your door, Joe.
I don't know what's going on out there, but I'm not going out there.
We're waiting to see how that turns out. Obviously, if you do want to wear a mask, it's not discouraged. You should wear a mask if you're not comfortable doing so, particularly in tight, crowded spaces. And I remind folks the vaccination rate is very high. It's about 95% single dose, but even the 2 doses, about 78%. Given how infectious Omicron is, the number needs to get closer to 95% 2 dose, and if you're boosted, that's even better. The higher the infection rate, the higher the vaccination rate needs to be to reach herd immunity. And as we talked before, Asia is now really the test case when you look at the Omicron wave, just smashing into those countries. And I think most of them have hit peak. But like us, their downward slope is slow, and they actually have a leveling out before it slopes down again. So You can see a spike and then it comes down, but it doesn't like spike down. It just kind of levels out, and it's probably going to level out for a while. So I'm still not convinced that Hong Kong's hit a peak. They think they have. I think that peak is still a little bit off. Um, but I mean, places like South Korea has seems to start to hit the level section and lowering down. And, as telling my friends, prior to Omicron, the total deaths count in Hong Kong was 200. They're into 3,400 and counting of death from Omicron, not from Delta, Alpha, or the original. So Omicron does kill folks, and not surprising, it hits the uninfected. I mean, the unvaccinated really hard. It kills folks that are much, much older and immune compromised, especially those unvaccinated. The morgue has no space for people. They cleaned out 3 hospitals for the purposes of just COVID patients and basically discharging folks as soon as humanly possible out of hospitals. And they're actually having some interesting problems regarding lack of preparedness. They try to build quarantine centers where they really should be addressing mitigation at the local level and triaging serious from unserious cases. And they recently just ordered the Pfizer COVID treatment pills. They have a shipment coming in. So, while as much as I continue to half glass full a situation of horrors of COVID, the hospital system has now been through essentially 4 types of waves. And not like I want to see another wave, because depending what country you're in, you count the waves differently. But I'm very confident that our medical system understands what to do next, and we have more therapies available that was unavailable in 2020 April.
Yeah, I know there's concern too that Hong Kong wave is going to affect the supply chain issue again, especially in the area of electronics.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, it is predominantly a service and financial hub, but they still do some small manufacturing, but also one of the top 5 shipping ports in the world. And moving goods and services, moving goods, as we all discovered, supply chain issues has been challenging. And anytime you shut any kind of port down or have a disruption in port services, affects world trade, any of them, doesn't matter which port. And China has locked down, I think, 70 million people. They closed the cities completely. I mean, like when I close, you can't leave your home closed, folks. They bring food to your building closed. And of course, mandatory testing has been a continuous thing that they test everybody nonstop. But again, it's Omicron. But by the time you realize the testing shows it, it's already asymptomatically or light symptom there, and then you already spread it. And given the fact it spreads faster than chickenpox now, and essentially well past 8 to 10 persons infected when one person's infected, that's spread rate. And it's less than 48 hours for infectiousness, and you may be completely healthy looking and fine, and you're still infecting folks. And they are using a Chinese made vaccine that was designed for the first virus.
Right.
So it's like, 3 versions or 5 versions behind, depending how you want to do math. And obviously, they're trying to develop mRNA internally, and they refuse to allow other vaccines into the country, refuse to purchase outside vaccines. And, it's a mandatory vaccine country. They're basically making you take the vaccine. So I wouldn't read too much into their infection numbers relative to their vaccination rate, because they're not using the same stuff we're using. And I think people should express some caution on looking at global numbers for several reasons. One, as I said before, different vaccines. Second, how they count COVID positive cases is very different, as well as COVID deaths. And also, again, people aren't always reporting to their local government if they're COVID positive. And, the idea of quarantine centers is basically a prison. And some people may be very selfish and say, look, I'm positive, I'm not telling anybody, I'm just going to go out there anyway. And guess what? People have done that in this country. Don't tell me that people have not tested positive and said, oh, I can't, I'm not going to deal with this, and just walk out the door.
Right. Yeah. People don't want, to miss work. They don't want to miss travel. They don't want to be stigmatized. A number of reasons for not reporting it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And given the fact we stopped doing contact tracing, is up to individual people who are infected to do their contact tracing on their own. I'm fairly confident people are not doing that in wide scale here either. So again, if you've been infected by COVID and you find out whether a take-home test or through the antigen test, you go to the lab test, please tell somebody that you're infected, that you've been in contact with, so they can also take the test to find out before you allow the spread to continue. Again, this is like chickenpox. For those of us that are old enough to remember chickenpox, you remember how fast it moved through a classroom?
Oh, like lightning. Yeah.
Imagine doing that in your office space, supermarket, etc. I mean, those who have been vaccinated against chickenpox probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But those of us know this, including myself, who has had chickenpox. I had it when I was in middle school, by the way, which was worse than having it as an elementary school kid. I remember having it during Easter week. That's how I remember.
Oh,
It was very warm.
time of year. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very warm day with chickenpox. It was miserable. Yeah, no, that's what we're still dealing with. So things are good. People should, still take precautions, but life is better.
Absolutely. Yeah. We can't ignore that. It's a nice breath of fresh air, quite literally.
Yeah.
Seeing as we're on the topic of international news, this is the day we're recording is the day that the Ukrainian president is virtually addressing Congress on Capitol Hill. And I think that's happening as we speak. Actually, did you want to give us any opinion on that, Jackie?
Sure. It was a 9 o'clock-ish start today. The Congress had an auditorium. It's the first time someone has spoken to a U.S. Congress in this new world of virtual format. As you may have seen, it is a war that's being played on social media. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry has been very carefully documenting the entire war. It is very obvious they're doing so. And those who don't know Zelensky's background is an actor. And we've had actor presidents. I remember Ronald Reagan. And one of the key skills of acting is communication and the ability to know your audience. And he definitely, even though there was a voiceover translator, clearly was able to convey the message of how to relate the situation in Ukraine to Americans. And he also did a very interesting point talking about how when the leading democracies of the world is a leader recognized by other countries, and who is going to be responsible for maintaining peace and freedom democracies, and who's going to take that responsibility. Ukraine is a 30-some-odd-year-old country, former Soviet Union country. Ukraine has never been a country before. It's always been part of Russia. The Ukrainian people, does have a distinct culture, although it's very intermixed because of the nature of trade and vacation and all that. I mean, it's hard to not have multiple influence country cultures because of geography. But I mean, it's demonstrated the last 30 years they are their own people. And but it also put about 3-minute documentary showing the horrors of war, the before and after effects. If this was your home, how would you feel? And it's extremely moving. Even some of that footage was not part of footage you see in the United States. Someone came off the Defense Ministry. You may see it in other overseas news media, but it was pretty graphic and incredibly shocking, especially on civilians. Those of you are probably aware that the Russians have adopted a position of just destroying civilian targets, apartment buildings, hospitals, schools, in an attempt to basically destroy the morale of the people there, force the government to redirect the military forces from military base protections to civilian target protection, and spread the forces out. I mean, it's a very obvious tactic. You want to spread the force out, try to reduce the killing, or need to force them to do other things than actually fighting the Russians, like saving people's lives and crush buildings. And to try to get the president to submit that the death of potentially hundreds of thousands of non-combatants will, put him into submission. That he has a hard choice of whether or not to allow more civilians to die. This is mass murder. It's basically using mass murder to try to convince someone to do something else. I mean, this is what we're looking at. And he evoked things that we are very familiar with. 9/11. I know there's some younger folks that weren't alive during that. It's been over 20 years now of 9/11. Pearl Harbor, the surprise attack, and like 24 hours of horror over Hawaii. Even the suggestion that we should have an alternative to NATO was actually an interesting point. That perhaps there should be a defense pact or defense agreements among non-NATO countries to work with NATO or the United States, or maybe the UK or any other countries to try to create a stability among democratic nations, even not exactly part of an alliance. But also to remind folks, the U.S. government has provided an enormous amount of weapons, billions of dollars in weapons, $1 billion in humanitarian aid. Congress rapidly, they never do anything rapidly, approved funding for more humanitarian and military support for Ukraine. European nations have ponied up, and even countries that are forbidden by constitutional law to allow weapons off their shores, such as Japan, there has provided humanitarian aid and supportive equipment for the military that is not lethal,
Right.
non-lethal support equipment. So in countries like Taiwan, now Taiwan's not a country in the eyes of China, but I mean, another democratic region, Taiwan, has provided financial humanitarian aid, and other countries have imposed various sanctions on Russia to not or create equal sanctions if you're not part of the NATO EU bloc, but that has occurred. And you all know they're going after oligarchs and others. And the Russians' retaliation is to prohibit travel by the president and a number of senior officials from entering Russia, which I'm kind of like, that's your response. I don't think Joe Biden's going to be going to Russia anytime soon, or perhaps ever, the remainder of his lifetime.
Right.
But again, it's people should remember there is a information war inside Russia themselves. We're looking in from the outside on both this war and into Russia, and it's crucial for the Russian government and Putin to control the message internally regarding how the war is going, how they respond to U.S., EU, and NATO. I say EU and NATO because they aren't identical countries in both groups. So obviously, they have to demonstrate a response, but the information war is going to be very harder for Russia as body bags come in on a quote unquote special operation.
Right. Yeah. The incursion, I think he calls it, or something like that. Yeah.
Well, we know better than any other country in the world, the United States, what it's like to have loved ones come home, defending our freedoms. You can debate all you want about where we went and how we do it. In Russia is a little bit of a different case. The argument he's making is a Nazi country. He brings up those images of World War II, where Russia was ravaged by Nazi Germany. It was very obvious messaging there for him, for his population.
Right.
They were ravaged by Nazi Germany during World War II. And that's why he's trying to portray Ukraine as, even though Zelensky is Jewish, and they bombed the Holocaust Memorial, which is, not exactly good image from the for the Russians there. But I mean, this messaging is going to get harder because the arguments we're protecting ourselves from a foreign invader that's significantly weaker economically and militarily. And they've not done anything to actually attack the country. There was no military or terrorist action by Ukraine against Russia. So it's not an identical scenario to our, quite frankly, invasions and defensive measures against other regions of the world, because they did attack us. They were staging grounds for terrorists.
Right.
They were places where they were harboring folks that were out to kill us.
Right.
And intelligence showed time and time again that's what was going on. So it's going to be interesting if Putin can keep up the messaging. And you saw on state-run news, a woman ran onto the stage, news editor ran on the stage saying, "No war, you're being lied to in Russia." Very brave, but this is Russia. Also potentially very deadly for her.
Yeah, she has put herself in peril for sure.
Yeah, this is continues to be a country where you can vanish.
Interesting if some refugees may be coming to Massachusetts, any provisions being made at the state level for that?
We put some money in the most recent supplemental budget in anticipation of possible Ukrainian refugees. We still are taking Afghan refugees. We put some money in last year's state budget for that. We will reevaluate if state money needs to go in to provide support of local agencies on top of whatever the federal government provides. But it's kind of a wait and see. We'll address as we go. I've been advocating ways and means workforce development. My attitude is that we should try to get refugees acclimated, obviously settled in a home, get some basic needs settled in, try to help them plug into the local service agencies, but also we should try to help them find jobs. We do have a workforce shortage, as we all know. Try to figure out how to find jobs, how to get the kid to school, vaccination, proper medical care. And we're not just talking about COVID, we're talking about things like tuberculosis, hepatitis, other types of diseases that they may not have medical care for or know about. There's always that possibility. Medical care is not equal over the world. There's a lot of things that suggest ways and means regarding, obviously, stuff that helps our economy, but also helps them so they can help our economy, so to speak. And I still believe, getting people a job as quick as possible, get someone to feed as quickly as possible. And also very concerned about PTSD. As we learned from other refugees talking to folks, when your job is survival, your mental health doesn't come in priority. It's when you have a ability to sleep in a quiet bed that the horrors of your life goes back and haunts you.
Right. A lot of the refugees will initially at least be women and children, because they're the ones that are fleeing first. So possibility maybe there to fill some gaps, because a lot of women left the workforce during the pandemic.
Yeah, and again, this goes back to child care services. There's a shortage of early educators, and that area of the economy. Had a chat with the YMCA last week about this, and I have a hard time seeing where to fill in a workforce shortage there. We do have some higher educated folks from Afghanistan, and suspect to be higher educated folks from Ukraine that have some professional skills coming here as well. That's something we got to figure out how to deal with, particularly if your university has been bombed. How do we verify your credentials? That is a big problem. And if we don't find a way to figure that out, we could be passing up on a different type of skills we could need. This country historically has not been generous. My father's college degree when he came here in the 60s was not recognized. He actually had to go to night school. And this was from Hong Kong, a British colony. He went to Hong Kong schools, and they didn't recognize his degree. And people are always very surprised when I say that. But a lot of people's foreign education is not recognized in the United States. Things have changed, obviously, as Hong Kong become much more a first world city. But different standards, folks, right? So we'll see how that plays out. There could be an opportunity to address workforce issues, but they're not going to get government assistance for very long, these refugees, and they got to get moving on to life as quickly as possible, even if it's just a temporary situation. Perhaps some of these folks, but the Afghans obviously can't go back. The Taliban's basically killing people once they come home, but perhaps hopefully maybe Ukraine settles down, and it'll be a large financial effort from Western countries for, frankly, to rebuild that country. If you've seen the news footage, we're not talking about military bases; they're just leveling cities now.
I know.
Whole suburbs have gone up in fire. Imagine parts of Quincy, like in Marymount or Walston or anywhere around here, trying to get to the city of Boston. They basically shell Quincy on the way through.
Right.
That's what's going on.
Yeah, it's a tragedy for sure. It may, the country may emerge looking differently when this is all over. Who knows?
Imagine fleeing a country and who knows what's going to happen, but you come back. Yeah, you're right. It's not this looked at place have been before. And, we haven't seen this kind of devastation on that continent since World War II. It keeps getting repeated, but it's true. The last two major world conflicts that basically devastated all over the planet came out of Europe.
Yep.
And obviously, point of NATO and the EU is to prevent another major military conflict in Europe. But obviously, Putin doesn't have that same point of view.
That's an understatement. Yeah, exactly. What's going on in your committee these days, Jackie?
Well, we held a public hearing on Monday. I chatted about a little last time regarding the ballot question on allowing more retail store alcohol licenses. We didn't have a lot of in-person testimony in terms of video testimony in this format. We continue because we actually heard similar bills earlier this session along the same type. A lot of folks didn't seem to feel the need to repeat the testimony. So we received a lot of written testimony instead. And of course, you want to watch the old videos, you can watch my State Representative Taki Chan Facebook. You have to kind of scroll around. Of course, Massachusetts legislature's website, malegislature.gov, has the recordings of the public hearings of the committees and well. And given the fact it's a ballot question, the legislature and the governor have to sign this into law by May 4th. Otherwise, they can go get more signatures, about 13,000 plus more signatures, due in the Secretary's office by early August if the legislature doesn't take any action. It's actually kind of a unique issue because I cannot amend this bill. It's as is, take it all or nothing. Even if the bill's screwed up, technically drawn, I can't really do much with that. Even if they made errors in drafting, I can't do anything with it. So the hope is perhaps the various parties will get together and work out a deal. Obviously, the package stores, the alcohol retail liquor guys have a somewhat of different positions since they have the ballot question looming. And it appears based on testimony that literally everybody else, almost everybody else in his industry is against it. So the food markets, the supermarkets are against this proposal. The retail association is against this proposal. The big box stores obviously will be against this proposal. The convenience stores are against this proposal. So basically all the other retailers is against it. Total Wines has some concerns, but they're for it in principle, I think is the way to put it. Even though legislation doesn't exactly seek what they're looking regarding expansion of liquor license retail. And thus, actually the strongest argument, in my opinion, the package stores make that day in the testimony was a limited market share. So there's only so many people to buy alcohol around, and they only can buy so much.
Yeah, I mean, the pie is pretty much cut into as many pieces as it can be, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and if you allow more beer and wine into supermarkets, it's one-stop shopping, and it cuts into your local liquor store, which is why I always encourage folks that, yeah, it's an extra trip, but, please use your local liquor store. It's a small business. It's all family run. It's not part of a major corporation for the most part. I mean, Total Wines is kind of unique and a few others. But I mean, it is, literally run by a family. So, there's a legit concern they have that the commercial liquor licenses devalues not just the license of their own value, because the limited number of licenses create a monetary benefit in terms of monetary valuation if they sell or transfer, but also market share.
Mm-hmm.
Every time one customer buys from one place and not the other, not very common sense, folks. So the expansion liquor license is something they're looking to do in a much controlled manner, as opposed to just flooding the market with liquor licenses. You go around the country and you see places that have actually no liquor license quotas. You don't really think about it because we don't, but you see there are not a lot of small independently owned liquor stores. I mean, I'm not saying they don't exist, but we can buy booze at CVS in Nevada, because I've been to a Nevada CVS. I was kind of taken aback. It was like, you could buy Johnny Walker. And it wasn't like behind a counter. It was like sitting there in front of you at a CVS to pick up.
Wow.
I'm pretty confident that the independent small mom and dad store probably would be struggling pretty hard unless they had complete control of the geographic area in terms of market.
Interesting. Can you buy liquor online in Massachusetts?
Sort of. There is alcohol delivery services like Drizzly. Everybody's heard of that at this point. Yeah. And they have to get a special license to do so.
Okay.
GoPuff is here. Again, they have a special license to do so. They're more like a fulfillment facility than an actual store. There is no storefront. They deliver services.
Yeah.
But of course, we have cocktails going, beer and wine to go from restaurants, and groups like Uber and DoorDash have been providing that service as part of restaurant takeout alcohol to go. As people have heard in the past, a lot of reservations about how this works, particularly checking ID, and obviously this affects some of the retail market share. But if you want to pay for ridiculously marked up alcohol, you can still do that to April 1st of this year. There is what we did and the governor did together was we suspended all the laws. We didn't actually stop outdoor dining. We suspended all the regulatory requirements to allow city and towns to just issue these licenses, and we created the same thing with the ABCC review of this takeout alcohol situation. It's not part of the regular law in that case. Takeout alcohol is not part of our general laws. Yeah. It's a special circumstance, but the Senate has yet to act on the continuation suspension of all laws regarding outdoor dining and takeout alcohol. We proposed to April 1st of 2023. in this most recent supplemental budget, we're waiting for the Senate to take action. It's mid-March, so obviously you can imagine some concerns in the restaurant industry. But I remind everyone again, there was no takeout alcohol prior to COVID, but there was outdoor dining.
Right. Yeah, there was outdoor dining just with a special permit, right?
Yeah, and the city and towns know how to permit these. So all we did was suspend all the rules and laws around how to permit.
Okay, so that's wait and see right now. What else is going to be on for ballot questions this year, Tacky? Do you know yet?
Well, it's a so-called anti-Uber one, which is a little bit of a very confusing one, addressing the independent contractor law. Independent contractor law bases a three-part test, right? It's about whether or not you have ability to control within the terms of the contract, how, when, and how to get something done. Again, pursuant to contract, you're not prohibited from working for other folks while contract, unless otherwise stated by contract. And you're not actually an employee, meaning the employer's not treating you like an employee. Beyond scope of contract, or the contract itself makes you more of an employee than not. So that's really kind of like a super simple explanation. So there's been a push around the country on trying to redefine independent contractors, especially with rideshare groups. And obviously, this not just affects them; it affects actually a lot of independent contractors, which is creating some issues because while the big labor unions are pushing to make them look more like employees than independent contractors, the independent contractors out there, you guys all know somebody does their own contracting work or accounting or work from home or hire people to do work for them. I mean, they're not exactly an organized group. It's not like they have an association of independent workers, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
So it's actually going to be interesting how this messaging plays out because there's plenty of folks who are okay with the current law and don't want to be dragged into employee status for whatever reasons. I mean, it's their own business, business decision. But I mean, there's a potential that this law could eliminate a lot of these folks that are working independent contractor under the current statute. Get pulled in to become full employees, which have actually a huge ripple in the marketplace. So it's called anti-Uber, but it's not just about ride sharing.
Okay, it's just for marketing purposes, basically.
Yeah, because people like to beat up a big corporate.
Yeah.
And as I've spoken in the past, I'm not here to defend big corporate, but let's be fair. It's fair, folks. I mean, if you misbehave as a small employer, you misbehave as a large employer, you're still misbehaving.
Right. And I would think independent contractors would be concerned about being dragged into, time requirements. There are regulatory issues that would apply to a contracted employee that they wouldn't want to adhere to.
Agreed. And so this is a much more complex issue, and it'll be interesting how it's going to be marketed. I've looked at both sides of the issue. I get where everyone's coming from, but again, the independent contract law is very complex in Massachusetts, driven by a lot of case law. I did cite a very brief summary of it, but it's much more involved. So I'm not sure how it's going to play out. I don't know if the public's going to understand how this works.
Right.
Most of us are not independent contractors employee, where most of us are employed by an hourly or salary.
Right.
So I'm not sure. The other ballot question, it looks like it's going to get there, is what I call the anti-Delta dental one. It's funded by a small number of dentists who are seeking to change their reimbursement rate structure of insurance companies. And the reason I call it anti-Delta dental because some years back, Delta Dental has completely changed its form regarding reimbursement rate of services for dentists that actually cost them a significant amount of money for services. And obviously, people want to get paid properly for services. And talking to the Dental Society and some of my friends in this industry, the margins are not what people think they are. We factor in labor costs of employees and materials, and of course, rising costs now of everything. The margins of profits shrink if they want to maintain no additional charges to the consumer and having insurance pick it up.
Okay. Interesting. The voting changes, have those passed yet, Tacky?
We're still waiting.
Not yet. Okay. I know I ask you almost every week.
You know before I know.
Yeah, it's something obviously the city and town clerk's offices are eager to find out about so they can get ready.
I will presume there'll be something. I will tell you the same town clerks probably have an inkling of what they need to do anyway, given the past experience.
True. Yeah.
I'm extremely confident in Nikki Crispo's ability to just do what she needs to do. Upcoming elections, there's no presidential primary, so there was no March election this year like it was 2020. And it'll be a September 6th primary, followed by the standard first Tuesday in November, which I have to look at the calendar. So we'll have the standard election period. So there's plenty of time still for the clerks to get ready for that. They have the dates, and that's actually a big deal. Once they have the primary date, they can kind of work towards that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm extremely confident in the city clerk's office here to do a wonderful job like that in the past.
You mentioned you spoke with the YMCA lately. Anything else going on locally we should let folks know about?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the Quincy Sun you could look at because that's how I view my city council news. So you can. I'm not going to talk about that stuff. You have city councils that come on, so you can have them talk about their stuff. I think there's some degree of normality coming back to local services. Still a very high need on LIHEAP, low income energy assistance program, particularly for people still in oil, especially. We put some money into the supplemental budget to help that out. Obviously, everyone's feeling the rising fuel prices, and if you're in a low fixed income situation, this hurts you more, which is the LIHEAP program at QCAP. So I do encourage people to call QCAP if you're having a fuel assistance problems. That program is still active. The YMCA is still seeing not as high membership return.
Mm-hmm.
Understandably, people are still very hesitant in this area of COVID. I do think Quincy's better than some other communities regarding COVID response in terms of the general population. So that's something to be mindful of, that maybe it is time to go back to the Y. But if you're uncomfortable and you want to talk to the Y, they're very understanding of that. Local human services obviously are very impacted by the same cost inflation as you all are. So their cost of doing business is very difficult, which means they can serve less people. If people are able to help them out, obviously, I've encouraged this all through the last 2 years. And if you can, please do. If you can't, they understand. And obviously, we had no St. Patrick's Day roast, which QETV has probably video that probably should never surface.
We're keeping that in a locked vault.
I believe it goes to the Quincy Foundation, which the mayor organized and helps fund things like the Flag Day Parade. I'm sure they're going to have other types of fundraising mechanisms to help pay for Flag Day. It has been pretty much a privately financed event for a very long time. So obviously, they'd like to do another Flag Day regardless of the size. Last year was trimmed down, but we still had it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've already got calls ready for Memorial Day events. They're not rushing yet, and it's been pretty slow. And even Chinatown got word that the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association is going to do a very trimmed down Chinese New Year dinner banquet to celebrate the Lunar New Year. Obviously, it's 6 weeks out from the Lunar New Year, but that's okay.
It's still the same year, so
the same year. And today is March 16th, and it's the anniversary of the Atlanta Spa shooting. So it's amazing how quickly a year passes. And I did hear an NPR yesterday. There's some notoriety of it, and we'll see how mainstream media is going to catch up and whether they're going to continue this conversation regarding Asian racism. So we'll wait and see, how the mainstream responds to this. That event, and remind folks that was not charged as a hate crime right away. It took quite a while for law enforcement to declare it. And again, I remind folks that gaslit the victims because the claim of sex addiction, and they automatically went to the presumption that prostitution, and just kind of assumed the victims were doing something illegal when they absolutely were not. So this is not just a reminder about a racially motivated attack, but also how law enforcement in Atlanta treated the victims as if they somehow deserved it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a lot of assumptions made without without actual facts. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't see it as much with other folks. Very rarely do you see this with other ethnic groups where they will basically work in a presumption the victim had it coming to them.
Right. Well, that's a work in progress for sure. Do you think any progress has been made on that front?
In New York, this past weekend, Filipino woman was assaulted, punched 125 times in the lobby of her own apartment building, unprovoked by one of the tenants. So no, we're far from this. It's just that some of these crimes have not been reported in our local news because it hasn't reached that level. And even then, on national media, it may come up on your news feed, but it hasn't obviously reached a level of outcry. And I'll be honest, Ukraine obviously has dominated airwaves. Inflation has dominated airwaves. Every time some politician says something stupid, dominates the airwaves. So I understand. Okay, I understand how news cycles work and the priorities. And Tom Brady's dominated airwaves on his 44-day retirement. It's just how the news cycle works, folks. I get it. But I don't think everyone kind of sees the full picture of what gets lost in the conversation with the media. Which is why I always encourage folks to watch, overseas media. You see what their view of us are. And always, like I say, I always read the local stuff like the Quincy Sun because I always very much encourage that to folks. But also still believe in local news, QATV, but also our big channels in 4, 5, and now 10. But you got 7, which is a little. It's not a nationally broadcast affiliated channel now, but they do focus on local interest issues. And I think people need to get away from CNN and Fox and go back to the way I grew up. It sounds strange watching Net and Chat, which I know they're both retired, and
Yeah.
Chet's passed on.
Yes.
That's how I grew up when news works, and even on local news, the faces of who's on the news have changed in a positive way.
Yeah, well, I'm obviously a big advocate for community media support, and we see how important an independent media is, given what's going on in the Russian media.
Oh yeah, the Russians parliament rapidly passed a bill that Putin signed. It makes it up to 15 years potential imprisonment for not following the government line. They made it illegal to call the Ukrainian war a war. You must call it a special operation. It has resulted in many foreign media outlets leaving Russia for fear of possibility of arrest. And local media has basically closed internet and print and video. Internet video media in Russia has effectively been silenced. And Russia has got ahead of Western social media on Facebook and Twitter by basically shutting them down to try to prevent the proliferation of information. Now, don't get me wrong, folks. I know there's always false information on the internet. And, foreign media has definitely pointed out that you should be verifying every video you see on social media to confirm that it is authentic. I'll give you a simple example of the Tokyo Olympics having these fireworks. That weren't actually the fireworks at Tokyo Olympics, but it was broadcast over YouTube as if it was. And it was verified by folks that this was not an authentic video. It's a very benign thing, but people were posting it over the place and it was fictional. But now we're in a war, and given the sheer volume of coverage by all media on a global level that's on the ground, you have much more reliable sources than Facebook and Twitter. Although I do find it fascinating. I was watching Colbert, and was it Colbert? They were actually showing footage of TikTok videos, which was actually done by Russian troops in Ukraine, showing what's going on the Russian side. Again, this is the ineptitude of the military. You do not allow your soldiers to social media their military operations, folks. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, picture that happening with a U.S. force. It just wouldn't.
No, you don't. I remember Gerardo Rivera during the Gulf War, where he was like drawing pictures in the sand of what the operation was. I'm like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
These are common sense things that that we kind of like in America take like, oh yeah, this is common sense. You shouldn't do that, but obviously it's not equal common sense everywhere.
Right.
So I believe TikTok is pulling out of Russia, or has pulled out of Russia as well. But this is truly a social media war in the sense that, the Ukrainian government, as well as people on the ground, is able to film and document the horrors of the day-to-day life. Used to be you get journals. People remember people had journals during the war. After World War One and World War Two, there were audio recordings of veterans and Holocaust survivors and other civilian victims. But now we're in a unique situation where civilians in a war zone are literally documenting their lives for us in real time.
Right. Yeah. All right, Tacky. We should let folks know how to get a hold of you.
Sure. 617-722-2014, 617-722-2014. That's the phone number to the office. We are staffed, but phones do ring. So if it's busy, just leave a message. And tacky.chan at emmyhouse.gov, tackey.chan at emmyhouse.gov. I do prioritize emails that are constituent service driven. I do read all your emails, folks, including the ones in the junk mail box, which I do have to skim through to find your email. Believe it or not, Microsoft Outlook is horrible. You guys all use it in your workplace. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And obviously, State Representative Tacky Chan Facebook page. I mentioned that before. Put some interesting information up, as well as all my executive sessions and public hearings. And obviously, tackichan.org. Again, that's more of a referral website for people who want to look up some phone numbers. We try to centralize information for you. For example, like finding QCAP's phone number website will be there. And we're doing another update, obviously, so you may see some stuff added on, not taken off, because obviously QCAP's still here. So we're now revising and reevaluating some of those the links and reformat a website to try and make it a little bit simpler to use. But that is becoming a discussion among me and staff regarding what is user friendly.
Okay. Depends on who the user is.
Yes, it's not as intuitive because everyone's got different idea what intuitive means.
Right. Yeah, I understand. I find that to be a generational thing, actually.
I agree completely with you, and I am definitely showing signs of age too. When I'm like, is this how it's supposed to work?
Yeah, if it takes more than 2 clicks, I'm not going to use it.
No, I'm with you there. So, but yeah, no, this again, I've not had a discontinuation of any kind of constituent service. We did not have any disruption or discontinuation of public hearings and committee work. And we're still operating a legislative session under emergency rules. So for now 3 years, state legislature has been in continuous formal session operations. Those who don't know, the calendar is normally in the odd number year. The year we're sworn in goes from January to the first day of August. August is a break month. We generally recess under the rules. We're back after Labor Day and go straight to right before Thanksgiving, and we break again from Thanksgiving to New Year's, and we go from New Year's in the even number year, which is 2022 now, to August 1st. In 2020, we never shut down operations in terms of formal sessions because of the nature of the emergency. And so, yeah, I've been running a few years now outside the normal schedule.
Yes, we're all going to take a long deserved vacation someday.
Someday that will come.
Good to talk to you, Tacky. Appreciate it.
Take care. I'll talk to you soon.